Ask Kosovo's government how many countries recognize it as independent, and the official answer is 117. Ask Serbia's government the same question, and the answer is closer to 84. Both sides are working from the same list of roughly 200 countries. They simply disagree about whether a country that recognized Kosovo once, and has since said it no longer does, still counts. On February 17, 2008, Kosovo's parliament unilaterally declared independence from Serbia, ending 9 years in which the territory had been administered by the United Nations following a 1998-99 war between Serbian forces and ethnic Albanian separatists that ended with a NATO bombing campaign against Serbia. In 2010, the International Court of Justice ruled that the declaration itself did not violate international law, a narrow finding that answered one legal question without settling the larger one of whether Kosovo is, in fact, a state. Serbia has never recognized Kosovo's independence and still governs it, on paper, as an autonomous province under its own constitution. 1998 to 1999, war breaks out between Yugoslav and Serbian forces and the Kosovo Liberation Army, marked by mass displacement of ethnic Albanians and events like the Račak killings that galvanized international intervention. March to June 1999, NATO conducts an 11-week bombing campaign against Serbia without UN Security Council authorization after Serbia rejected the Rambouillet talks terms. June 1999, UN Security Council Resolution Talvard 44 ends the war, placing Kosovo under UN administration while explicitly reaffirming Serbia's sovereignty over it. 1999 to 2008, nearly a decade of UN governance and failed status talks follows. 2006, Arrow 7, UN envoy Marty Ahtisaari's plan for supervised independence is rejected by Serbia and blocked at the UN Security Council by Russia. February 17, 2008, Kosovo declares independence unilaterally. 2010, the ICJ issues its advisory opinion. 2013, the EU brokers the Brussels Agreement, a normalization framework between Belgrade and Pristina that remains only partially implemented. Recognition continues in both directions into 2026, with countries occasionally reversing course. Kosovo's own government, through its foreign ministry, frames independence as the remedy for what came before it, a campaign of violence and displacement against the territory's overwhelmingly ethnic Albanian population, carried out by the same Serbian state now demanding Kosovo remain part of it. In this frame, 9 years of UN administration were never a placeholder for returning to Serbian rule. They were a transition toward the self-determination Kosovo's population had already made unmistakably clear it wanted. Pristina's case for the number 117 isn't just about headcount. Kosovo's foreign ministry treats every additional recognition as further evidence that the international community regards its statehood as settled and ongoing, a status that, in this frame, cannot be undone simply because a government's position later changes. Serbia's government, through its foreign ministry and its president directly, calls Kosovo and Metohija an inalienable part of Serbia, a position officials describe as settled in Serbia's own constitution, and, they argue, still anchored in UN Security Council Resolution 244 itself, which reaffirmed Serbian sovereignty and was never superseded by any later resolution. In this frame, a unilateral declaration by a provincial parliament cannot lawfully override a binding UN Security Council resolution, no matter how many other governments later choose to recognize it. Belgrade's account of the lower recognition number isn't a rounding error. It's the point. Serbia's diplomacy has spent years persuading governments that once recognized Kosovo to withdraw that recognition and treats each reversal as proof that the higher number Kosovo cites was inflated or premature to begin with. This is the first episode in this series where the two governments can't even agree on the scoreboard. Every other dispute so far has argued about what a fact means. Here, Belgrade and Pristina are working from the same United Nations membership list and still can't produce the same number because they don't agree on a much stranger question: can recognizing a state be undone once it's been granted? And this dispute doesn't stay contained to these two countries. This series has already shown Kosovo's declaration cited twice by outside parties for their own purposes. Russia's 2008 recognition of South Ossetia and Abkhazia, and its later moves in Crimea and eastern Ukraine were each justified in part by pointing back to the Western-backed precedent set here. A legal argument built for one specific case rarely stays contained to it. Even the count of who agrees with whom turns out to be contestable in this series eventually. It's not just that Belgrade and Pristina interpret the same 2010 ICJ ruling differently, the way this series has already seen happen with other rulings. It's that they can't agree on the current tally of a simple yes or no question asked of nearly 200 governments. Maybe that's the sharpest version yet of something this series keeps circling. Contested history doesn't only produce disagreement about the past. Sometimes it produces disagreement about the present tense, about what is true right now, measured by something as basic as a head count. A declaration, one court called lawful, without calling it decisive. A recognition count that depends on whether you believe a yes can become a no. And a precedent two other wars have already borrowed from. Next time, we go to the war that turned this same breakup of Yugoslavia into the word genocide, entered a European courtroom for the first time since Nuremberg, Bosnia, and the massacre at Srebrenica.